Hey, good morning, Bible readers. I'm joining you in our reading plan, not from Dallas, but from the Doubletree Hotel in Alpharetta, Georgia. Why, you ask? Over a dozen or so of our HPMC staff are here in Atlanta for the Drive Conference at North Point Community Church. We just came in, it's Tuesday night, we just came in from a main event where we had a raucous game of laser tag and bowling. So it's time to settle in and think about our reading for tomorrow, or today if you're watching this on Instagram, which is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 1 through 24. Now, this part of Paul's letter is not meant to be read in a bite-sized chunk. Remember, we're reading somebody else's mail, and nobody who would have read this read it 5 sentences at a time. They would have read it in one whole body. So this is coming right in the middle of Paul's teaching on what our bodies are for, on morality, sexual morality. If you missed Matt's 2 videos yesterday, check them out. They were super thoughtful. But I want to focus our conversation today on this little section at the end of the reading where Paul gives advice. He says, if you are married, don't seek to be single. If you're single, don't seek to be married. If you're circumcised, don't be uncircumcised. If you're uncircumcised, don't be circumcised. If you're a slave, don't try to be free. If you're free, don't sell yourself into slavery. Quick note on this. When Paul talks about slavery, it's a pretty separate issue from the African slave trade that we know when we think about slavery in the U.S. In the Roman world, slavery was common. It was an accepted social status. And if you had serious debt, you owed somebody, you could sell yourself into slavery, almost as an indentured servant. So this is not a conversation about slavery or whether it's right or wrong, but what he's saying is all about status. So all of these examples he lists off, whether it's about marriage or circumcision or slavery, it's all about somebody's status and standing and security in the world. So what he's saying is, don't spend your energy chasing after being something you're not already, but root yourself in Christ. Root yourself in your identity first as followers of Jesus, as God's beloved. And the status is second. So for us, we're not having debates about whether you should be circumcised or uncircumcised. But what is it for you that hangs you up that you think, oh, if only I were blank? Maybe it is about being married if you're single. If only I were single. If you're married but are struggling to have kids, oh, if only I could have kids, then I would be satisfied or complete. If only I lived in this neighborhood, if only my kids were at this school, or maybe we should switch schools. And what Paul is trying to do is sort of silence the chatter around your status and remind you that the first and most important thing about your life is being faithful to God. So he says, it doesn't matter if you're circumcised. The only thing is that you obey God's commandment. The first thing that should be driving us is not all of these external indicators of our status, but that we first belong to God and we are faithful to him. And then those other things will follow. So what is it for you? What are those restless places where you think, if only I were blank? And I think Paul's word to us as we think about that is not to imagine that just by switching that status, you will suddenly be whole and complete and content. That only comes when we find our identity in Jesus and we know that God is with us and for us.